Alrighty, welcome back. Band on Band. It's the BSM podcast where we get members of bands to talk about their favourite BSM bands. It's wonderfully simple and effective. On this week's episode, we have Andrew from The Fall of Troy, and we sit down and have a conversation about BSM cult classic band Secondsmile. Great stuff.
Hello world, welcome back to another episode of Band on Band. This week I am joined by the wonderful Andrew from the band The Fall of Troy. Hello, good morning, how are you?
Hey Connor, I'm doing well. Doing well as possible, I think.
Right? Yeah, in these times, if everyone's just happy and fine at home, I'm happy.
Yeah.
We want to talk about Secondsmile.
I mean, definitely one of my favorite top 10 bands of all time.
Wow, I love to hear it. Tell me about the first time you discovered them and how that made you feel on the inside, how your head was, everything about it.
Yeah, so it probably was 2004 or early 2005, but I think 2004, we had this was in the dark ages of the internet, and we had a forum on our website, and one of the sub forums was like a self-promotion forum, and people would post their bands in there, hoping to, I assume, glean some fans off of us. And so occasionally we would pop in there and just listen. We hear lots of demos over the years, and some better than others.
As always.
Yeah. This might be too much info, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but we used to have a record label named Roadside Records, and we would sign people to it all the time. We'd get a good demo, listen to it in the van, and immediately sign them to Roadside.
Awesome.
So I don't know. I'm sure I popped in there someday and noticed a post from somebody, I assume Ross, but maybe Kev, and it was a band called Secondsmile, and they had posted up the single from their EP. EP is called I'm Not Romeo, You're Not Juliet, and it was the first time I think we had heard a band that was like maybe influenced by us, but for sure shared the same influences as us, that was doing something that we were like blown away by. And I always forget the name of the song. It's like to all poets unite in hate or whatever, but it had like shreddy guitars and tapping and like brutal screaming, and it really it felt like being a ship at sea, and then seeing another ship, like lost at sea, and then seeing somebody else. And it's not like we were some totally unique band, but at the time it really felt like we were doing our own thing, and to like find out, oh no, there's these other people out there who are doing a thing that's like so cool. I guess a better way to describe it would be what we were trying to do was write music that was interesting to us, because I think ultimately that's like the most fulfilling thing. You write music that you want to listen to.
Absolutely.
And and so then to hear like another band who, and of course like we're like, all right, we know what we like, but to hear another band do something that was so like perfectly aligned with what we were into at the time, it really felt like, oh, these guys get it. And like, and I'm sure there was also like a little bit of like, art's not a competition, but bands love to compete. And so absolutely. There was some like, oh man, these guys are like coming in hot.
We've got to step up our game.
Exactly. Yeah. It really felt like, oh man. So I think it was just like exciting. If I was going to use one word, it was really exciting to hear a band, on our like forums, who were, in my mind, like as good or better than us. So again, music's not a competition, but
No, I think that's great, especially because there's been there hasn't been a website or a platform that's brought that sort of community together since MySpace, or since people created their own domains back in the day. With your classic top eights, I can imagine Secondsmile was straight in there.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm sure they were in our top 8. I think so we heard that demo, right, and then probably a year after that, maybe less, but we were on tour, our first UK tour with the Bled and Fear Before the March of Flames, and we played. I want to say it's called the Wedgwood Rooms in Portsmouth.
The Wedgwood Rooms, yeah.
That's right, yeah. And, it was a crazy show for us. Our gear showed up super late, and that we were up first. And so, the crowd was waiting, people were throwing bottles. We were kind of and this is our first show. This is our first show in the UK ever. So we're like, holy shit.
Welcome.
Yeah. I also think it was the day after Thanksgiving, which obviously you guys don't care about, but we had been there the day before, so the venue had given us a Thanksgiving dinner, which was so sweet.
That's nice.
But anyway, so we had this, the gear gets loaded straight on stage. We play this crazy 20-minute set, and then afterward Ross is there, and he gave me the demo for Walk in the Light and Reach for the Sky, and I remember thinking because I think, Ollie had quit, the singer from the first EP, was no longer in the band. And I kind of remember thinking I don't know if this is going to be, the same or whatever. And then we popped it in, and, we were immediately blown away in a different, they had clearly evolved in the best way possible. So I had two first, I got to hear them for the first time twice, really. Yeah. And then, after hearing that demo, we thought, we got to tour with these guys and do more stuff. So,
yeah, absolutely. And it's so great that you can connect with someone, especially so far away from home. There's obviously a big relationship between the US and the UK music scene, but even back in 2004, 5, 6, it must have been, it must have felt like you'd got a musical and digital pen pal all of a sudden. Absolutely. I was thinking about that because I was trying to think, how did we talk to them? Because we weren't, none of us were big emailers. And then, I was listening to their albums in preparation for this. And then, there's a song on the last album called Aspen Fears. And that was Ross's AOL screen name for a long time. And so I'm sure we were taught, that was how we, talked to them, was AOL Instant Messenger. And it really brought me back. Yeah. Yeah, some Hotmail, maybe some MySpace direct messages or something. But because you can't just ping someone a DM and say, do you want a quick FaceTime, or do you want a WhatsApp call? You've got to coordinate the digital hangouts. Absolutely, yeah. It felt like, it felt more quaint, I guess. Less accessible. It was I imagine, even pre-internet, what it was like a little bit, where you got these updates from people, but it wasn't the constant communication we have now. Yeah, I feel like I have that with some of the elder members of my family's friendship group, where you talk to an auntie who you haven't spoken to in 5 years, and then all of a sudden you're writing emails, paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. But I feel like when you were on MySpace, or when you were back in the day on AOL or something like that, you would just, those conversations would happen. It wouldn't be so instant, and you would go away and you'd be like, I've just been writing and demoing. Oh, same over here. And you just it doesn't feel like it has to be so instant, which is kind of beautiful in a way. Yeah, I miss that. I think about that frequently, where you're always on right now. Everybody has to be always on, and it's been, especially everyone's working from home now, so you're even more, there's no separation. Yeah, and so I miss those times. It was always cool. They'd post an update on MySpace or something, and we'd be like, oh, they're doing a cool European tour with jetpacks, or stuff like that. So it felt very cool, I think. Or you get the classic just ... in the studio. Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah.
so mysterious and
build that hype.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was different times. You know, there was no like algorithm to game. It was really a little bit more classical hype building.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk me through because I mean we always ask on this podcast like what your favorite record from this band's discography are, and you came back to me via email and were just like, I'm going to talk about all of them because they're all good.
Yeah.
So here's your platform.
For sure. I mean, so I said, you know, we heard that first song, and then I think I feel like my brother got me the EP for Christmas that year or something.
Happy Christmas.
It was great. Yeah. And actually since then he re-gifted it because we, you know, CDs obviously fell out of fashion like shortly after that. And then he must have found it somewhere and he gave me the CD again a few years ago. And I thought, this is still really good. So the first one, different singer, Ollie, heavier, I think, than the later ones. That was it really felt like, aggressive, technical, just like nonstop, you know, from the get-go. 4 songs of just like balls to the wall. And
we had that for a while here at that time. Like
where that was the style.
Yeah, towards like 05, 06, 07. I feel like there was a lot of bands that would come out and were trying to like replicate a certain style that wasn't as popular over here as it was in the States. And like, then it sort of went into the mafia world as well.
Right. Like during that time, when I think of the like UK music scene as a whole during that time, it's really like indie, right? Isn't that was like the hot thing?
It was the popular stuff. I was not a popular kid.
I mean, same.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, Arctic Monkeys and stuff like that, right? And, Libertines, is that Pete Doherty, right? Yeah,
they're all up there on top of the pops.
Anyway, none of that was never that interesting to me. So to hear a band that like clearly liked At the Drive-In and like probably Refused and like stuff like that, I thought
heavy influences.
Yeah, absolutely. And they did like the tricks, right? The pull-offs and the tapping and definitely like I think that first album is probably more. Maybe not. I don't know. It's always hard to tell, but like more mathy. You know, they an interesting thing about them to me is like they do the same thing that I always hope we do, which is they have kind of mathy parts, but when you're like listening to it, it doesn't feel like, hey, we jammed a 7/8 part in here. You're like grooving, and then you're like, oh, this kind of, this seems a little weird, and then if you count it out, you're like, oh, that's, it's not in 4/4. And that's always I think anyone can write like a 13/8 part or whatever, right? But like to do something that's not 3/4, 4/4 and make it like groove, that's the trick. And so they are so good at that.
It's accessible, and I think that's like a real art to it. Like you said, like anyone, well, not anyone, but a good guitarist can sit down and work out something that's technically impressive and difficult to count along to. But if you can put that functionality and riff and guitar skills within a 4/4 beat and it still not sound like 4/4, I think you get a lot of people who can nod to it and be like, oh, this is technical, but I enjoy it, and it's not pushing me away.
Exactly. Yeah. The technicality is secondary to the song, right? As opposed to being like the feature. And so I think they're really good at that, especially on that first EP. So first EP, I'm like, interest is peaked, but I'm like, let's hear some more. And again, this is kind of like back in the day where you're not getting daily updates. There's no like feed. So
burning through that every day, just desiring more,
waiting. Oh, absolutely. And also wondering, this is like, you're kind of, because there's a lack of information, you're kind of wondering like, are they even still a band?
100%. You'd never know.
Yeah. And so then, Ross shows up out of the blue, like at our first UK show ever. And it was like, it's so cool looking back on it because of the like relationship we've had since then. But it really felt like, man, what a big and small world, right?
Yeah.
That like a stupid band from Mukilteo could go play in England and, meet up randomly with this guy, not randomly, but like unexpectedly with this guy who is in a band that we love. So yeah. Then like I said, that second album, Walk in the Light, Reach for the Sky. I after listening to them all, I think for me, I'm not going to say that's the best album, but for me, that one has the most nostalgia and like, warm and fuzzy feelings, I think, just because of everything else that was going on at the time for us. So I think it's
how crazy is it that they...
Oh, go ahead.
Just saying, how crazy is it that you... I know we talked about it a couple of times now, but you come to the UK for the first time and you just happen to be handed this CD from a guy that is in a band that you really like. I mean, like, the stars aligned to that. You could have been in like a shitty mood. You could have not wanted to talk to anyone. You could have been pissed off because people were throwing bottles at you. And it just merged into such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, not only what did he like give us the CD, but the CD wasn't out. This was like, I don't know if it was mastered or what, but so it felt like not only am I getting a CD from like a band I'm a fan of, but I'm getting it before everybody else. Yeah. It really felt like
sinker.
Yeah, it was like, man, this is so cool. What a like it was one of those moments where I was so grateful to be doing what I was doing, because like if you're a Secondsmile fan, if you're basically if you're any other Secondsmile fan, you don't get to have that experience. And so it felt like very personal and exciting. And I'm sure we listened to it that night. This on that tour, it's the only tour we've ever done in a bus. We split a bus with Fear Before the March of Flames, and so I'm sure we went to the back lounge, put in the album and just were like loving it. Eight songs. It's just in listening to it, I realized they are kind of the kings of like good first part, and then transition into this like different, beautiful second part of the song. They're without it feeling like jammed together. They always have these like beautiful bridges that lead into these beautiful second halves of the song. They always reminded me of like, I love Minus the Bear, no
Great
question,
band.
but yeah, absolutely. But they always reminded me of like a little bit of what I hoped Minus the Bear not could be, but like if I was like, oh, here's the changes I would make to Minus the Bear, they did it. They went heavy at times where I wanted it, and they they write. There's like an amazing like acoustic song on that album. I just think it's funny too listening to it back now. Like in my mind, the first track was like my favorite, but then it turns out like, oh no, actually I think there's a song on that album called Astronauts that's kind of like midway through, and I think it was actually the single from the album, or one of them.
I think it was as well. Yeah.
Yeah, So I think that's like probably my favorite song on the album. But we eventually got that CD, like the released version of it. I'm sure when we toured with them, and it lived in our van in the U.S. Like I think it was never more than like a foot away from the CD player for years. So just loved it. Like I said, we were always not concerned, but like when you lose the lead singer, you kind of feel like, oh, is it going to be as
heart
good?
and soul was moved a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Ross stepped up and was like such a not a replacement, but like he did his own thing, and it worked as well, if not better, than what Ollie had done. And so really at that point I thought, oh man, I had loved that first EP, but like now I'm like, oh, these guys are legit, right?
Yeah.
Not that they weren't before, but it really felt like this is like a force to be reckoned with, and it's not like a flash in the pan one-off. Oh, they had like a great EP, but then everything else sucks.
They came into their own. They grew up a little bit, almost grew into their sound, and were like, no messing around. We're here now. We've got 8
Yeah.
songs, which is mad
Yeah.
that you call that an album in that time.
I mean, it feels like not enough and just right. Because,
Yeah.
you know, you don't, I think, especially even now, asking somebody to listen to a whole album feels like a lot. You know, the like
Yeah.
attention span, myself included, is like so much shorter than previously. So even though I think the album's still, you know, album length, 40 plus minutes or whatever, but if I see 8
Yeah.
track titles, I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
agree.
think that's good. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah,
then
and then,
Years
you know, we
came out.
toured with them right. Well, you know, we spent some time with them and got to know them, and that was very cool. But then, yeah, years came out. I remember hearing again, like, you know, like a letter arrived in the mail or whatever, and it was like, we're recording in Brooklyn. And I thought, oh man, well, you know, it felt like that, where it was, and this is, you know, what, 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
It still felt like you were just getting these isolated updates. But yeah, they were in America, like, recording. I'm like, this album's going to be amazing. And it was, you know, it still is. It has all the, like, same elements that I loved in the previous album, but like, sounded better, right? The production was, like, a little bit better. You know, that first track on the album, there's this, like, little, like, pause in the music, and then it comes back in with, like, the most ripping tapping part where they're just, like, you know, doing this, like, build with the guitar just, like, shredding. And I, you know, of course, like, listening to that, I had that, like, same first feeling that I felt when I heard the song on the forums, where I'm like, man, dude, they're doing it. They get it. You know, which was so cool. It's so rare for me to hear a band, and then every time they come out with something new, I'm like, it's as good, if not better, than the last one.
Yeah.
You
Constantly
know,
growing.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, I think at that time too, they had added the third guitar player, Tom 2, or the Jazzer, as I think he became known.
3 guitars are always better than 2 guitars.
I mean, I think that is like walking a tightrope. You know, and this is another thing I was, like, thinking about when I was listening to it, is that they have 3 guitar players, and it never feels like too much. It never feels useless, right? Like, every part, if you took away any of the parts, the song would not be as good. And that is such a feat of writing, to have, you know, 3 people on the same instrument that aren't stepping all over each other, and, like, the tones are recorded just right so that it, you know, you can still pick them out, but there's enough synergy between them that it sounds like more, you know, it's more than 3, right? Yeah, the sum is greater than the parts. So I remember we were all like, dude, 3 guitars? Are you kidding me? Like, dude, I mean, because we're a 3-piece, so, you know, we're like, you only need 1. Just make them do more.
Just make them really good.
Yeah. But they're like the best counter argument to that, like, no, you can do 3 if you do it really well. And they, you know, the 2 Toms and Ross are like, we're just always so locked in. And so, yeah, that album was like a maturation of the previous stuff. It really felt like, you know, the kind of, like, down-tempo, low-key songs were a little bit more, like, fully fleshed out, and the heavy stuff was still there, but, like, tastier somehow. Yeah, so I think, like, we were all super excited for what was, you know, next, right? Because now, again, like, this is the track record for us is, like, first EP, amazing, big change, you know, first full length, amazing, and then another change, and then, you know, full length, amazing. And so for us, we're like, where are they going to top out, right? Like,
where can this band go? Exactly.
Yeah, it was so exciting. And then, you know, I think around that time is when we really started having, I mean, started having is probably not the right way, but we continued having personal problems in the band. Like, and so I think whatever our awareness of what they were up to kind of, like, dwindled, because we were just kind of focused on our own nightmare. And so, I just remember hearing that they were done. and being like so bummed, and it really felt like, you know, tragic, but also like what a great legacy to leave. You know, three pieces of art that are like perfect. I mean, really, there's nothing. Absolutely, yeah. There's nothing on those albums that I think they wouldn't be better off without it. So, yeah, I love. You know, the original question was like, talk about the albums. I love all of them. You know,
I liked it.
Yeah, they're all just like. They're all a different. Each album is a different band, right? And they're all, but there is a through line, and you can tell that. I was thinking about this too. You know, if somebody played me a new Secondsmile song, I guarantee you I'd know it was Secondsmile in the first 30 seconds. Like they had such a unique voice. Yeah, you know, I miss them. You know, and they've all gone on to do other stuff. But there's none of it scratches that same itch for me. So, I mean, I'll start the campaign now. New Secondsmile album. The world needs it.
Get the GoFundMe going.
That's right. Get the boys back together. We'll get the GoFundMe. I'm sure Kev will, you know, it'll come out.
Put some money into it. It'll be fine.
That's right. Yeah. It'd be good.
It's advert time. Yep. We thought we'd break up the wonderful conversation and chuck an advert into it, because that's what professional podcasts do, and I won't hear anything else. We are a professional podcast. Anyway, talking to my good friend Andrew from The Fall of Troy. They released a new album this year. I know, how 2020 release a new album. It's very good. Obviously it's good because we released it. It's great if you like Fall of Troy, if you like the tapping, if you like the intensity. It's the one for you. It doesn't stop. Yeah, from the moment you press go to the end, riffs and hits. And that's the sales pitch. If you like riffs and you like hits, this one's for you. That'll do it.
From my perspective, being on this side of the world, around that time, there was so many bands that would come and go in such like a flash of light almost. Secondsmile obviously had quite a few years behind them, but it felt like they were in and out of the pan so quickly. You would go to a gig and you would see like the one band that's in all the publications, and there'd be like 3 or 4 bands behind them, and they would be like, yeah, I've got a second album out, or this is our last show. Yeah. It was like such a knife edge here at that time. And I mean, maybe it wasn't that people were putting money into rock music at that time, but there's so many like cult bands here that I think will always stand the test of time, Secondsmile being one of them.
Are there some other ones you want to tell me so I can listen to them?
Oh, I mean, most of them are just on the BSM roster. Like
there it is.
And
yeah. Mimi and St. Louis, love them. So good. I think there's only like one piece of vinyl for Secondsmile, and I think it's a one side is them and one side is Mimi and St. Louis. I could be wrong about that, but I don't know.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, who knows?
I would have to do some fact checking
totally
on
fair.
that.
Yeah,
but most of them were around that sort of time and around that sort of just outside London scene, like Colour and like Hold Your Horses. Do you know them?
No, yeah, I'll check them out.
They're quite good. Yeah. I'll send you a link afterwards. But it seemed like that scene was like very hot for a minute and then disappeared. Yeah, and it feels like we haven't had that for a while.
Let me ask, because now I got you on the hook. There's this band we toured with Secondsmile and Daughters. They're called the Miramar Disaster, who I loved. I don't know if that would be in that same realm, but they were great. No,
I do not know them, but that's a great band.
Yeah, they're great.
There's so many bands. I felt like specifically back in that MySpace world, you could discover your favorite band on Monday, and then by Sunday they'd be broken up.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or it'd be like someone's personal project who just puts an EP up online.
Right, yeah,
and then they're like,
that's why
I've done what I needed to do.
Yeah, that is 100% why it felt so special when we got that first full length, ahead of time, because it felt, you're right, it was like a knife's edge where they're either breaking up or they're gonna do a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Talk to me about touring with them. You alluded to it. That must have been, again, as a fan.
Yeah, that's what you hope for, right? Is to
best tour you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about those tours are formative, because our first, that first tour in the UK with the Bled and Fear Before, it really didn't feel like we were inside of the UK. Like we weren't sharing it with somebody from the country, right? So it's really hard to have any insight into what it really feels like to like be a part of that scene. We were showing up on a bus, loading in, and then like waking up in the next town, which is
playing and going.
Yeah, and that's fine, but that's not the most joy I've ever gotten out of touring is like when you're like hanging out at the party, that the house party after the show, whatever, right?
Yeah.
With like the locals. That is like the fun part of touring, or that's one of the fun parts, I guess. That and being on stage.
Or stopping in service stations.
Oh man, that is like another, there's so many like small differences between the US and the UK, and that service station thing is like, was crazy to us the first time we stayed at like a Formula One or something, and we're like, it's all here. Whereas in the US, like you get off on an exit and you're just like in a town, and you're like, you find whatever. So that culture is interesting.
And how everything's new, no matter where you stay and where you stop. You're like, this service station is completely different to the one we stayed in yesterday.
That's right.
Or when you go into Europe and you go from Belgium to France, and you're like, oh, I need to pay to use the bathroom now.
God, yeah, man, all that, yeah. So our first tour with them was probably like 6 or 8 months after that first UK tour, and it not only getting to watch like our favorite band every night, but then, I'll tell this story. It's embarrassing to me, but I think it like
Perfect.
illustrates how quickly like we became friends. The first night we played a show somewhere, who knows, and we went out to a club afterward with them, and it was a pound doubles night at the club. And
all right,
yeah. Well, this was great for me. I don't drink anymore, but at the time I drank a lot, and so my last memory is of like drinking a lot of booze with them. The next thing I know, I'm awake, something's sticking to my face, and I'm like pretty uncomfortable, and my head is like pounding, and I kind of like come to, I look up, and I realize like my face is like covered in dried blood. There's a blanket stuck to it, and I'm in a van I've never been in before, and I like slowly realize like, oh, I'm in the Secondsmile van. My van is like nowhere to be found, and I've like clearly been injured, like a head injury, and eventually like they woke up and they're like, yeah, you walked away. We went like had a great night at the club. We were going back to the vans to leave, and then you walked away for like a minute, and you just came back with like blood pouring out of a wound on your face, and and they like immediately were like, come in our van, lay down. I mean, they probably should have taken me to the hospital, but like, they took me into the like safe place immediately, and like I'm sure it took care of me and made sure I had blankets, and and from then on it really just felt like we were as close as bands could be. If the first night like the band that you're on tour with, the drummer like destroys himself, and then you like step up and give him like a place to sleep. I don't know why my band didn't take care of me. I'm sure it was like of no fault of their own. I'm sure I was being difficult or something, but they
it's lost to time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure they could tell you, I'll get a follow-up, I'll email you, but yeah, I think just like we were always riding in their van. I think aside from the joy of getting to watch your favorite band every night, and they were like amazing live performers. I think they put on like flawless performances, every time. I can't remember a show where I thought like, man, they really missed the mark. I was always like so grateful to get to play with them, because you just want to play with cool bands who like keep the quality of the show high, right? And they never, it always felt like, man, we really got to go out there and like do it now, because they have like set the bar. So yeah, aside from like that part of it, the like personal relationships with them were just like amazing. I always felt like they were our brothers, in another country, and they showed us like, the like, little parts of the culture that I don't think we would have gotten had we not been so close. Like we had a day off or whatever, and a bunch of our people went to go see Stonehenge, but instead, like, fine, right? Nothing wrong with that. But
it's a classic,
of course, yeah. But I was like, fuck that, I'm gonna go. They were playing is it called Freshers Week? They were playing
at some uni.
Yeah. And in like the like student union hall, and I was like, can I come? And they're like, absolutely. And
hell yeah.
We went. They played like a burner of a show to like some. I don't know. I feel like the people probably could not have cared less, right? Like,
just you at the front going
I mean,
nuts.
It really was. There's a picture from that show where I'm like clearly wasted and like rocking out, and like nobody else is. But and then we we stayed in a kid's dorm with them, right? And then like the next morning, their van got booted, and they had to like deal with all this shit. And so like it really felt like they welcomed us into their world in a way that doesn't always happen when you tour overseas, because whatever, people have their own shit going on, and they they were just so great. I mean, they are so great, but like those times are, it felt like the world was, like I said before, like so big and then so small, where you could be on tour with a band that you learned about from a forum post, right? And having like the best time of your life. So yeah, those are fondest memories. We did 2 UK tours, I think 2, maybe 3 with them. And they're like, some of my best memories ever. So yeah.
I love that. Touring can be so grueling as well, especially if you're the headliner, you've got so much stuff to deal with left, right, and center. But if you're a support act and you're getting in and you're basically just there for the ride and you're just proving yourself, and if the people who are like, it's their show, are not sort of welcoming you in or talking to you, it gets that really weird divide between two people that really you're seeing each other every day.
Yeah.
And I liked that you understood that not being in a bus is really different from being in a van, because I think a lot of people aspire to be in the bus, but really it smells. You're around 12 other people.
Yeah, there's no flexibility. There's no
Absolutely.
I get that, like, at a point you have to do that if you want to keep growing as a band, but for like a mathcore post-hardcore band from like we're not. There's a like ceiling to what we're going to become. So for me, I'm like, let's do it fun. Let's do it where we can go to the dorm after the show, right, or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you see Stonehenge on the way back as well? Because you can just drive straight past
it. I've never been there.
Oh no.
I'll go someday. I'll go with my family or whatever. Like, I would never. That experience, like going to that Freshers Week, was 1,000 times better than I could ever imagine Stonehenge being. You know what I mean? So
they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. So let me have these like personal experiences rather than these, like.
Absolutely.
Standard,
if it makes you feel better, I used to live very close to it, and I drove past it maybe countless times.
I mean, did it lose its magic?
Yes.
Yeah, I imagine.
It's just some stones. I mean, they look great.
Yeah.
But hey, that's what it is. Final question before I let you go back to your day. As an artist yourself, what has been like the lasting influence that you've taken away from Secondsmile? Have they influenced you personally now? Are they still influencing you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 levels. One, I didn't really talk about this very much, but like personally for the drumming, Serge, as he was known, they all always had like great nicknames, Serge and the Jazzer, and their bass player Phil was Regain.
These make no sense, but I
mean, I should also like I promised myself I would have this like interlude, so I'm going to talk about it now. They always had great nicknames, and we would always talk about where they're from, Bridport, and they had these like names for people in the town that were, like amazing, like Chain Man, who was like a guy who would like menace people with a chain. But like our favorites were, this is like a potential band name, were Sideways Head and the Lifters. And so like, there was a guy who like always had his head, turned sideways. And then the Lifters were like this mom and kid couple who would, the kid would like pitch a fit in a store, and then the mom would like, you know, make off with all sorts of merchandise and stuff. And yeah, they just had this like, you know, mystique surrounding them with these like crazy characters and names. But anyway, back to what I was saying, that, you know, the drumming, Serge was always so like tasteful, but also brutal. You know, he had this ability to, like, he would do like a clean ride pattern. I like rarely ever do like a clean ride pattern. I'm always crashing on the ride. And he would do these like clean ride patterns with like, you know, immaculate double bass work that shouldn't work in a band like that, right? Like, they're not a band where a double kick should add to it. It should like stick out like a sore thumb. And somehow he was able to like make it work at the right times. He was always so tasteful with it. And so for me, like drumming wise, I think that was a huge influence.
Yeah, I mean, around that time, everyone wanted the double kick.
Yeah.
Everyone was buying them for Christmas. Everyone was starting post-metal bands, post-hardcore bands.
I think it was like, you know, I think the double kick is one of the most abused pieces of equipment in history, right? But like he was able to do it in a way that it never felt like too much. I was always like, oh yeah, that makes sense right there. And I hope to emulate that. So that has like always stuck with me. And then like as a whole, as a band, I mean, I think just the general quality of their output, you know, really like every song needed to be there, or was like qualified to be there. And I you know, we've definitely like not done that. There's songs on albums where I'm like, probably shouldn't have put that on there. You know,
what would Secondsmile have done?
They definitely wouldn't. They would have just done an 8-song album that was perfect, right? There's no like duds on there. And so, you know, there's probably some albums we should have just done 8 songs and said like, that's it. And it's good. But at least like being aware of that ethos that, you know, just put like strong stuff on there. And they, you know, if you talk to them, they might say like, this was whatever, blah, 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 that we should have done a 7-song album instead of 8, because that one was a dud. But as a fan, I'm like, you did no wrong. There's really nothing like I would have changed about their trajectory. So I don't know. I think like I'm a little bit blinded by my love for them because other than just to say, you know, I also said like, right, when you hear a band that's great, you're like, wow, we really got to bring it now. And like, that was true for their recordings and for their live performances. So I think if nothing else, like just the idea that you got to work hard because there's like people out there doing great. And, you know, you can't phone it in. I guess that's the like lasting creative legacy, is that you can't phone it in. They definitely did not. And so, we need to like, you know, give a shit.
We need to just try harder.
Yeah. Well, or just be honest with yourself about where you're at, right? Like, so
their songs never felt like they never felt like they dragged on, as you touched on earlier, and they never felt nothing felt like out of place, like you were saying with the kick pedals or the 3 guitarists.
Yeah.
It sort of fell together really nicely, and that's a great thing. That's so hard to do in bands because some people will just try and outshine other people. Totally, yeah.
And
yet they managed to do it.
Yeah, they felt, that's a great way to put it. They felt like such a like perfectly aligned unit that, you know, there was nobody was like trying to hog the spotlight, or, you know, that's how it felt like from the outside. They really were working as like a perfectly oiled machine. And that's impressive with, I mean, there's 4 dudes on Walking on Light and Reach for the Sky and 5 dudes on, you know, Years, like just by like virtue of interpersonal relationships that should not have worked as like seamlessly as it did, but they managed to do it. And that was the like vibe always in the van too. You know, they might have had like, somebody might have gotten too drunk and they're like giving them shit or whatever, but there never felt like there was an odd man out. They always felt really united, like a united front. And that, man, even in a band with 3 people, like we struggled with that frequently, where, you know, the like team ups happen all the time where it's 2-on-1 and we're like, you know, shitting on somebody. And yeah, they, you know,
Trios are tough.
it's just true. Yeah. So yeah, they were always a great unit. I miss them. I frequently wish that like I would have gotten to spend more time with them as a band. I've seen them, you know, as people since we've been back since then. And there was one, we played a show in Bristol, I think, where everybody but Ross was able to come out. Ross was on tour with Lonely the Brave, and it was so awesome to get to see everybody again. So yeah, I guess I should start the campaign now for Secondsmile reunion 2021. It's out there. I'll get the GoFundMe going. We'll do this right.
Hopefully you can come and tour, and you can just say, look, the only band we want supporting us on this one show is Secondsmile. Just make it happen. Man, we'll give them all our guarantee. It's fine.
Dude, I would do it. That's not even like, I know this is like joking, but I would 100% play a show where we made no money if we got to play with Secondsmile. Like, I would do it. I love them that much. They're such an important band to us as a band. So yeah, let's fucking do it.
From what you've said, I completely am not surprised by that. And that's a wonderful place to bookend it.
Yeah, perfect.
Come back, have a good time, and bring Secondsmile with you. Thanks so much for being in the podcast, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Connor. Really, really appreciate you.
Lovely stuff. There you have it. That is another episode of Band on Band Under the Belt. Just want to say thank you to Andrew for showing up, having a lovely time, and just being an all-round pleasure to talk to. Band on Band was hosted by me, Connor P. Laws. I've not gone anywhere, and it's edited by my good friend and guitar hero fan, Oscar Lydiard. That's that. Let's keep this rolling. Only a couple more left of the year. Thanks for listening. Tell us who you want to be on next. Someone needs to come on and talk about Jamie London. He keeps emailing me. All right, see you later. That's all. Bye.